Do you get the feeling that the zealousness with which our current Labor government is pursuing this takes that greenflation into account? Because they certainly do want to ramp it up, don't they?
If you look at the Parliamentary Budget Office assessment, they point out all of the risks. So, look, any crystal balling in the future is inherently risky because if we knew the answers, we could implement them. But I think the problem is that all of our eggs are being placed in one basket here, and because there are risks there, then if this is not successful, then we've actually created then an entire industry, an entire infrastructure and system and institutions that push us into that particular continuation of that policy.
Yeah.
So it'll be very difficult to suddenly undo that and pivot to something different.
Yeah.
And that's what really concerns me.
Yeah, I can see that. And, and if greenflation does take off, it'll be too late to pivot, as you say. Now, in October, the Albanese Labor government earmarked $20 billion for the Rewiring the Nation project. This is essentially spending $20 billion to replace our existing network of wires and interconnectors to hook up instead to the new places where solar panels and windmills are installed. Now, would this be necessary? I mean, the answer to this is obvious, but I have to ask you, would this be necessary if instead we chose the nuclear option?
Look, the nuclear option is not as simple as replacing things precisely in situ, like for example, to put nuclear SMRs in particular into current locations for coal and gas-fired. They may not have the geological conditions that would be suitable, but there are certainly other junctions, according to my colleagues in the Australian Nuclear Association and others I've spoken with, there are certainly locations where that could occur within the existing grid, and it would not require that significant overbuild that we're looking at with rewiring the nation. So there is potential there. Now, again, look, this does have risks. It's not it's not necessarily the perfect solution, but it is an option that at the moment is not even on the table. And that's what worries me, because when governments, particularly Labor governments, we saw this with NBN, when they pick technologies, they don't take into the account political rights and property rights and all these other rights we have in liberal democracies, unlike other countries that command economies. And so we end up with these systems getting caught up in politics, which means that they never get built, or they cost a lot more than they initially were costed at, or if they were costed at all, as we saw with NBN.
Exactly.
And we're seeing with Snowy Hydro.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Politicians are just solutions running around looking for a problem. Now, you say that choosing nuclear requires social licence, which is a big issue in Australia. It hasn't fully been tested. No one's, embraced it as a policy yet. But by the same token, doesn't rewiring the nation require social licence as well?
Absolutely. It's not necessarily apparent at the moment on a grand scale, but what we're seeing is, in opposition to things like HumeLink, already there are property owners who are not happy with the way that it's progressing. And this, of course, will lead to protests and legal challenges and other sorts of things, which effectively means that the Rewiring the Nation program doesn't have the social licence that might be readily assumed by somebody who's very keen to see renewables deployed immediately. And I think this is part of the other problem. Again, and I say this in liberal democracies, we have market systems and property rights and so on that need to be taken into account. We can't just railroad over those without affecting the way that we value the way that we live and so on. And we're starting to see this with HumeLink and elsewhere. And I dare say we've already seen this with gas plants and solar farms and wind farms and so on as well. So I think that as this ramps up, and we're talking about $20 billion, this is not just some small project. This is a major infrastructure project that is going to impact properties all over the country.